Hello, this is Steve from Object River. Today we're going to be demoing generating Python FastAPI REST technology using our cloud-based compiler. Everything you see today in the demo will be using free and open source technology. Also, Object River is not new. We have been using this technology in our consulting business for the last 20 years. And has been freely available in the cloud since 2014. Let's get to our demo. First, let's discuss the architecture of what you're going to see in the demo. And if you clicked on this video thinking, geez, you didn't know that FastAPI had a client, you were right. It wouldn't all fit on the thumbnail of the video. So basically, the client is a library called requests, and the server is FastAPI. But what they do share is they share this Pydantic library that is passing the data from client to server, server to client. Everything in yellow is basically Python libraries that are open source and freely available. Everything in green is what's generated from our compiler technology from metadata descriptions, and we include a default server implementation. The blue is your application code on the client and actually the server implementation that you overwrite from our generated server implementation. So now let's get to our demo. Okay, we're going to start our demo today. This is the PyCharm tool from IntelliJ. This is their free Python development IDE. And right here we're looking at our metadata defining a problem in this project called developers. And this is a sample of basically a bunch of different REST web services where we have some beans called baz and stuff and etc. And then we'll come down here, and these are the remote calls: set path param, set list. In this example, this is a function called set list that's passing in a list of strings, and it's returning a list of ints. Now this is our format, which is very much like like a Spring annotations. But you could also have this OpenAPI 3, and if you're like a Swagger guy, this is the metadata for defining actually the same problem. And additionally, if you're a Swagger guy, you don't even need to download our samples from our website or anything. All you need to do is configure our cloud compiler, which is a plugin to this PyCharm environment or any IntelliJ IDE like WebStorm or IntelliJ for Java, etc. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to configure what's called a run configuration in PyCharm, and this is the way to execute plugins or execute your Python code. So we'll go here, we'll go plus, we'll choose this cloud compiler. Now this has already been downloaded, this environment, but you can go to the plugins settings and download this compiler. And this is all free. So we're going to say call this FastAPI, and we're going to configure it. It's a REST application. We're configuring it for Python, client and server. We're going to get the model name. Go in our models directory. You can see we have the OpenAPI and our model. Either one, they're both the same. Configure an email address. That's it. So we're going to say save that, and now we're going to run it. Now this is reaching out to Amazon Web Services, and it's going to generate a bunch of code. And you see it's right here, it's generating some Docker stuff. We'll get to that later. It's generating some client code and tests, and then it's generating all this server code. And each one of these server codes, this is generated to the FastAPI documentation that documents large projects. Now I'll show you another feature of this compiler. We'll run it again. And you see it didn't generate this server code. And so this is meant for you to go in and add your server implementation, and it won't be overwritten by further runs of the compiler. So now let's take a quick look at some of the server code. The first thing you got to do is you got to reload from disk everything that was generated. And if we look in this app directory, and we go down in here, this is the server code. And today we're going to look at set list. This is the one we described earlier that passes in a list of strings and returns a list of integers. We also put this signature in here, but this is all generated code, and what it's doing is it's describing this set list procedure with the input of string and the return of a list of strings. And here, our return value, we're just returning just a simple list of integers, couple integers here. I mean, we also, for debugging, we do a print of all the input that's coming in and then the return value. So now let's go to compiling our server and running it. Okay, the first thing we got to do, since this is a new project, we got to do some housekeeping. So we're going to come over here and we're going to go to settings, and we're going to go and we're going to pick our interpreter. So we're going to go plus here. No, add interpreter, that's what we're going to do. And we're going to go Python 3.9. And it's creating that environment. So we say OK. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to open this README. And we've run the compiler, we've reloaded it from disk, and we've set up our Python interpreter. Now we want to install the requirements. And we've created this requirements document. This is kind of a Python standard here, and these are the components we need. We need FastAPI, Pydantic, ivcorn for running our server, and our request our client is this request software. So we're going to open a terminal, and we're going to execute that command, this pip command. And that just finished. And so what you'll see, if we go back to our settings and our interpreter, you can see now we've downloaded all of the code that's required to run our client and our server. Okay, so now let's run our server. We come over here, we come back to our README, and it says right here, let's cd to the app directory and run our server this way. So I'm going to go copy that, come down here, we're going to paste, here's return, and now our server's up and running. So if we go over to our browser, I'm going to drag this over from another window here. This is kind of like a Swagger back end, and now we'll see if you go to your browser and you go to localhost 8000 docs, you'll see the development. And so let's go to our set list. This was the example we were showing in the server code. We can say try it out, and here is the input, which is a list of strings, and I could just say, add another string here. And we execute it, and that executed with this curl command, and the server returned this list of integers. So this is like a test environment that's supplied with the FastAPI. So let's get out of here, and we'll go over to our client code. So we come back over here to our PyCharm environment, and first we'll look at some of this code. We have the client, a session, and a test. If we go to this session, this is some code we generate once, and this is how you're making the connection to the server. And so you may want to modify this. Say you're going to connect to Salesforce on the back end instead of FastAPI, then you can modify this for Salesforce, etc. But this is our client code. And our client code, let's go to set list here. Control F, set list. Okay, here's our set list. Again, you'll see the signature as a comment. And here's set list, and it's passing in, the definition is showing it's passing in a list of strings and returning integers. And this is the code required to make a call to the server backend and then return. And you can see it's printing status and details if there was errors, etc. But this returns back to your client application. So now let's go to the test code. We generate this one test code with, testing everything. And you can see a set list there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this and I'm going to do a run. And this will automatically build a run configuration. And it's calling every procedure and printing the results. So there's our set list returning those two integers, and you've seen that from before. Okay, now we're going to show basically some bonus footage. We're going to show you how to deploy your server to the internet with Docker containers. So the first thing I'm going to do, let me just remove this test terminal. We'll go to this terminal. We're going to kill our existing server with a Control-C. I'm going to go back up a directory, and we're going to execute these Docker shell scripts you see here, docker build sh. Now this is downloading all the components needed, Python, all of those extra requirements you saw from the Docker hub to build a Docker image. Now that's created the Docker image of our Docker server. So I'm going to just execute Docker run, this script that we've generated. Now we're running our server in Docker. So if I go Docker PS, here's our server. I started 8 seconds ago, the developed server. So now if I run the test again, that just ran against our Docker server. And lastly, I can stop that server with the stop shell script. And if I go Docker PS, you can see that is stopped. And so now this is how, with this container, with this image, you can deploy that out to Amazon Web Services, and you can have your FastAPI server deployed out to Amazon Web Services or any website that you might want to run that on. So that concludes the demo for Object River's FastAPI implementation, client and server with Docker. Thanks for watching.